A record number of people are quitting their jobs as pandemic restrictions ease. Some people are hoping for better opportunities, such as more pay, a different working.
Thousands retail workers quit their jobs in April across the country.
A growing number of Republican-led states will be ending increased unemployment benefits. At least 11 states say they will be opting out of the federal program. The move would cut off $300 weekly unemployment benefits by the end of June.
After more than 17 months of expanded benefits, federal pandemic unemployment programs are set to end today, cutting off weekly payments to nearly 7.5 million people across the country.
Why there is a job crisis in 2021. The good old 9 to 5 and good old American fashioned way of making an earning in this world. What has changed so far? What are the causes that has led us up to the situation that we find ourselves in right now, which I would call a job crisis? Now in this video, we're going to point out the obvious, but we're also going to point out the unobvious to a viewer. Let's get straight into the content and look at some main factors that led us up to this job crisis in 2021. First, let's start with the most obvious of reasons, and probably one of the biggest factors that led us to this point, which we got to faster than we would have in normal circumstances, and that's the pandemic.
The pandemic?
Yes, sir, the pandemic. You see, while we had voluntary social distancing and lockdowns that took effect in March 2020, which initially worked to isolate and drive down those infections, those actions inadvertently precipitated a severe economic downturn. I'm sure before the pandemic, a lot of us were seeing stuff like this, or maybe even something like this. But now we're seeing something a little different almost a year later in 2021. I'm sure a lot of you have seen a lot of this. So as you can see, the effects of the pandemic were very much so damaging to our way of life here in America and around the world. That's stating the obvious. What's not obvious is the mental effect it has taken on American workers. You see, the number of Americans quitting their jobs has hit record highs over the past several months, and what they are calling something like the Great Resignation. In August, 4.3 million U.S. workers, which is 3% of the American workforce, left their positions.
Where did everybody go?
That's the highest number since they began tracking. Workers are quitting at high rates in every industry, not just one industry. I mean, we talking a lot of industries here. Entertainment, restaurants, educational services, transportation, warehousing, manufacturing, mining, wholesale trade, utilities, finance and insurance, construction, retail trade, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah, you got that right.
You guys get the picture. Remember earlier in the video when I said this? The mental effect.
The mental effect.
You were serious about that?
Well, that directly ties into my next point, which is mindset. You see, while the pandemic was one of the most obvious reasons why we're in the job crisis, we have to understand its most major effect, and that's mentally. You see, I made a video a couple months ago talking about why I wanted to quit my job personally at the end of the year. That's why I'm quitting my job by the end of 2021. I was willing to bet that a lot of other Americans were feeling the same way. Take a look at this chart, which represents the percentage change in employment during the pandemic-induced recession we just incurred, and all other recessions since post-World War II. This chart also shows the recovery period after those recessions for employment to return to normal. So what we can tell from the chart is that the last recession in 2007 is the worst we've had in employment drop-off up until now. But if you look at the recovery periods, the last recession took a long period of time to actually recover, compared to this recession where things seemingly got better immediately.
Who told you that?
Well, kinda. You'll see why most things aren't back to normal yet, which we may never get to again. The shift in power from companies to employees was pushed forward exponentially over this short period of time. A lot of us went from thinking like worker ants to thinking like entrepreneurs. Not only did the government help along this attitude of why people want to quit their jobs in 2021, but they also passed the CARES Act in response to the pandemic, giving $600 billion to small businesses. Now throw that in a mix with a couple of stimulus checks and an extra $600 on top of unemployment, which was later changed to $300, and we have the conditions for a mindset change. One other aspect of it that has fairly glanced over a lot when you look at news articles and other YouTube channels is the fact that we're going through a generational shift at the same time that we're going through a digital revolution. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so what we have here now are avatars that are representing every generation, starting off with the baby boomer generation that started in 1944. Each one of these generations think differently than the generation before it. And right now what we have are baby boomers leaving the workplace.
I'm too old for this shit.
While millennials and Generation Z are experiencing a renaissance of some sort, kind of like when the light bulb turns on and you realize that you were capable of a lot more than just working at a plant or working in some type of environment that you didn't control. Sole proprietorship, anyone? Now let's take into account the new digital asset world that has descended upon us ever so slowly, and the opportunities it's provided for us to even think about quitting or leaving our jobs. What opportunities, J-Vo? Well, there's a lot. We could point to digital stock exchanges, giving us more opportunity and access to the stock market, which we never had before. We have cryptocurrency, which is its own category in itself and branches out to many other possibilities that have never been realized until this point. NFTs, anyone? Now, if any of you don't know what crypto is by now, then you've been living under a rock. Remember the old days when Skype was the #1 video calling service? They still exist. Now we have Zoom, which is taking over video conferencing calls and meetings by storm, and a list of hefty other competitors who are also vying for the crown of video conferencing king. All right, so what do we know so far? We have a generation of baby boomers who are set to retire and taking most of consumer spending with them out of the workforce as well. Then we have millennials and Generation Z who have changed mindset on what it is to work in the workplace today and becoming more independent in the process. Now, when we mix that with the digital revolution that we're experiencing, then all of a sudden it all starts to make sense. That could help explain the work shortage. It could also help explain the power shift between companies and employees. But even with all these different variables mixed up in a pot, we're still missing one dark horse subject that we haven't explored before. And that leads me to my next point. Remember all that free money that the government was passing out during the pandemic? Well, it turns out that that money wasn't necessarily backed by anything.
What did you say?
You see, while many of us were spending that oh-so-sweet supposedly free money from the government, new PS5 anyone? The economy was recovering fast. A little bit too fast, disrupting a little something I like to call supply and demand. You see, with all that extra money that the government pumped into the economy, it was meant to keep the economy afloat and consumers to continue to spend, which they did naturally, which is a good thing, right? Well, in this case, not so much. You see, there was too much demand for our supply chain. And with so many corporations and companies shut down due to the uncertainty of the pandemic, there were also no workers. So what ultimately happens in these type of situations?
3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
Inflation. So the question is, how is inflation directly related to the job crisis? Well, it's fairly simple. I found a recent chart that shows the direct correlation between U.S. job growth and inflation. I want you guys to take a look at the beginning of 2020. The average hourly earnings were up, consumer products and prices were down, and everybody was happy, right?
Really? No, not really.
Well, look just 1 year later. Wage growth has basically plummeted and inflation has taken over, leaving us in the condition with overworked, underpaid workers who have to take on the slack from missing co-workers and the demand the public puts on those workers to perform at pre-pandemic levels. You see, you can't have prices continue to go up and wages continue to stay stagnant. That's what helped put us in a position that we're in right now. If there ever was a time to move on with something different that you want to do, this might be that time. So what you have to ask yourself is this really a job crisis or an opportunity? You be the judge of that. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. You know to like the video. You know to subscribe if you like this type of content. Sorry for being away for a while, but you know what? COVID is a
Bad mother.